I'm Todd Yeager from Laurel Legal Services, and here with me Sam Rosenzweig. We're going to go through a couple things about correcting time errors in Prime. The Prime program is pretty well set up to check errors in client files, but I've noticed that it doesn't really do a very good job of correcting time errors. There's not a lot of back and forth with some of the error checking that John Kemp has built into the program between the client's table and the time table. Obviously, when you want to check for client errors, the first thing that you probably want to do is, well, I can't get to the tables. There we go. Well, most of you, I'm sure, use the tables a lot, much more than the search screens. The search screen for the time is, at least in my opinion, almost useless to correct errors. As far as sorting A to Z and Z to A, there's not much filtering you can do. There's not a lot of options. But when it comes to the timetable, at least there is a way to go into the T timetable and kind of look at some things and correct errors from there that you can, and then get a little bit more specific with, you know, queries or some of the built-in error checking features. Say, for instance, I'm here in the timetable. Obviously, you can sort A to Z and Z to A just like you can with the search screens. And right off the bat, here's a file that has a random case number overtyped or typed in or typed incorrectly, whatever. That's an easy time error to correct, just as A to Z and Z to A on the timetable, or the T time column is. It's going to give you time that's 0, or if you go Z to A, it's going to give you time that, like right there off the bat, is somebody that put in a 27-hour day, which is probably impossible. Of course, there's A to Z and Z to A on time dates. The first few are somebody accidentally typed in 7008 instead of 2008, 2088s, 2800s. Those are all easily correctable time errors that are just due to input errors. I'm just going through the table here, or the T time table here. It's jumping around on me a little bit. Of course, the A to Z and Z to A works well for time activity. People put, you know, leave it blank, put zeros, put numbers, put random letters, Q's, X's, things like that. A to Z, Z to A on staff number will give you people that are, those are blanks, or like staff number 1, that's probably not a real staff number. That's obviously cases where you'd have to pull timesheets and any kind of other thing you might have to fall back on to find out who that staff number was supposed to be, how many hours the 27-hour day was supposed to be, things like that. However, there's, like I said, there's very limited ability to correct errors because there are a bunch of variables within the time records. Matters go with different time activities. Cases go with different starting times and ending times. So the program itself doesn't have a whole lot of built-in cross-checking between those things. And I don't know what I just did. All right, there I am. So what I do is use my own queries to find out certain things about the time to be able to correct the errors. Susan and Hank dropped in a couple of my queries here, and I'm just going to go over them and point out a couple things that are different from these, that are differences between these and what John Kemp has built into the system. These first, 7 or 8 here are the ones Susan and Hank dropped in for me to show to you. Usually the queries I make myself, I add like a plus sign, a minus sign, something in front of them, makes them easier to sort, easier to find. There's really no, once you start making your own queries, John Kemp has a very set way of naming things. He starts all his queries with Q's, he starts all his reports with R's, all of his forms with F's. That's just his way of doing things, but that's not necessarily a limitation or something that's necessary to be able to, for the program to find them. You can name them anything you want. Usually I put something on them to be able to find them in the big mass of stuff that's there. The first one here is make sure that attorneys, or at least support staff or paralegals, whoever that is able to or supposed to put in time, is putting time in on your time records. The built-in error check, and I'm just going to hit the design here so you can look at it real quick. The error checking built into Prime does have a check that makes sure that a staff member is assigned to time records. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that within your program that all of your staff members record time on cases. In this case, I have 3 people put in here on the staff number. It's looking for these 3 numbers and any time date greater than 2003. If I hit run here, it's going to bring back any time records that have those people in their staff number. In the T-time table and in the clients table, the case is assigned to these attorneys or these staff members. The numbers, staff numbers 121, 398, and 342 are probably intake workers or volunteers or any kind of person that might be in your program that has a staff number but not necessarily putting in time. And obviously, if your program is going to have a whole bunch of different numbers, staff numbers, you can obviously change that to whatever staff numbers shouldn't be having time records. Let me go on to another one here. Obviously, the next one, and these are just, they're alphabetical, so they're not in any kind of specific order here. The next one I have here is to check for cases that do not have time reported to them. And I'll hit design and go into it. The error checking in Prime, built into Prime, is based upon how many days back. The only time error checking I have ever found in Prime deals with searching time records that have not had an entry for X amount of days, and you specify how many days. That's good in one way, and in another way, it's also missing time record cases that have not had time put in on them ever. Say if a case was opened 6 years ago and there's a trial coming up in 7 months and you haven't put time on it for 7 months, obviously it's going to show up if you put 30 days back, 60 days back, whatever, how many ever days back you put. But it doesn't necessarily show you that that file is still viable. There's still time on that file. It's just that for a certain period of time there hasn't been any time put on it. This query is basically looking for, obviously, the case number and client's W, and time dates are null between whatever range this is. It's probably October through December. And if I hit run up here, it's going to show me any time dates, any cases that did not have time put on them during this period, whether they were opened or closed. And obviously this training database is not, right up to today, so there's going to be a lot. But it's going to show you when the latest time record was, and it's going to show you when it was open and closed, obviously, and whose staff number, which attorney or paralegal is assigned that case. If you're opening and closing files without any time at all, that's obviously a very, very bad thing.
We use that a lot, yes, as Todd just said, to capture cases that have been worked on, particularly open in the last quarter, and voila, no times reported on them. Well, that just shouldn't be. So it's a good way of catching people who open files and simply forget to record their time.
Right. There's a lot of, obviously if you have telephone intake units and people that do a lot of brief service over the telephone, there's probably a chance that you're going to open a file on one day and close it that same day or the next day or 2 days later, and they forget to write 0.3 hours spent on the telephone with that client. There's a lot of those. Not to say that the how many days back function that's built into Prime wouldn't catch those, but you never know. Let me go on to the next one here. Now, this one is for matters and supporting activity. I'm going to go into design and show it to you. The Prime program has a matter and supporting activity check. However, it doesn't check it both ways. The error checking built into Prime checks for matters and supporting activities that do not have a case activity, I believe, but they do not check. It does not check it the other way. It does not check that a case is coded as a matter case activity. This query checks it both ways. Obviously, it's looking for case numbers that are matters or supporting activities in these two lines. It's looking for any kind of time activity as null, which matters and supporting activities only have time activity, and it's looking for any case activity that is not null. So it's basically looking for both ways that matters and supporting activities can be reversed. It's also at the same time looking for matters and supporting activities that might have a time activity that is not matching either a matter or supporting activity. I'm not sure what this database has in it, but I'll hit run and look and see. There's actually quite a few. A matter with a time activity of A instead of something M, A, M, G, M, whatever it goes up to. Supporting activities with A's. Obviously, those have to be from input errors. I mean, there's no way around that. That's going to happen. But all of your matters and supporting activities obviously need a corresponding time activity, and A is not one of those options. And like I said, the built-in error checking in Prime checks for those. It just does not check them both ways. It checks for matters and supporting activities that have incorrect case activities, but it does not check for files that have matter or supporting case activities. So this is a good one to make sure that you cover all your bases with matters and supporting activities. The one down from here is our specific one. It has a bunch of staff numbers in it. I'm not going to go into it, but it's basically that same query with a bunch of things added, such as supporting activities that have, it's looking for anybody that's a staff number that is not a manager to put in support. Here at Laurel Legal Services anyway, only our managers put in supporting activity time. This query is going to check for anybody that's not in management that's putting in time under supporting activity. That could be different in your program here. This query is a little bit more specific to just our program, but there's a few more ways to look at those. The next one here is a big one for orphan time records. Obviously, you're going to have, every once in a while, you're going to get time records that are inputted that, for whatever reason, maybe the case got deleted, maybe either on purpose or by accident, maybe somebody typed in a file number wrong. It could be any number of things. Orphan time records are obviously records that have time put in on a file that actually does not exist. If you're putting in, hours and hours of time on files that aren't in your database, that's obviously a problem. I'll hit run up here and see what's in this database to show you what it's doing. It's obviously looking for cases that aren't matters and supporting activities, that do not have a corresponding case number in the client's W table. Obviously, when we did the sort A to Z, this one showed up. Obviously, that's not a time. That's not a case number. However, it somehow also has time put in on it. Obviously, the orphan time records are hard to catch. There's nothing built into Kemp's straight out of the box that does anything to look for those kind of records. So this is definitely a good one to have. I think Susan actually sent an orphan time records query out a long, long time ago. I don't remember if this is the same one or if it's one that I put into ours, but you definitely need something like that at the end of every quarter to make sure. The next one here is sort of along the same lines. It's rejected cases with time. We don't, here at Laurel Legal Services, we don't reject a whole lot of cases, but we reject enough that if there was time put in on a bunch of them, it's a bad thing. Let me go into the design and show you this one. It's basically the same thing as the orphan time. It's looking for almost the same kind of things. It's looking for case number, case type, open dates, all those kind of things. This is just a random, nothing after 6/30/2003 with a case type of R. It's looking for anything that has time after that date that's an R case type. So let me look in the practice database and see there's 7 entries that are 3.5 or 5.5 hours worth of time on rejected cases. Obviously, that's something that you would probably have to root through those files. It seems it's all on one file in this one. You'd have to root through the file and see what time was spent on those days on 7/10/07 to find out, why it was rejected between those periods, at some point between when it was open and closed. Obviously, those time records are going to either have to be deleted or changed to matters time or whatever your program's policy is. But putting time on rejected cases is definitely a no-no.
Todd, can I say, this is David, what shows up for us on those errors are generally, I fall in a couple of categories, but they're generally cases that were rejected years ago that are still showing up, but when people do a lookup for a client name, when they're putting time in, they pick the name of the rejected file from years before.
Right.
So this would be, just from looking at the date that the case was either opened or closed for us, or it wouldn't be closed, but the date that it was open would be a clue as to that was the kind of error.
Right. Honestly, we were getting a lot of those too, David, and what we did is that we went back and assigned all of the cases, all of the case time that was put on rejected files from, I think, in this query, I think it starts at 6/1/2003, 6/30/2003. I think that everything before that date, at least in our database, was changed to time on a dummy file. So we have sort of a dummy file that has all of that time. So the case time for those rejected files aren't going to show up in this query, but that case time hasn't necessarily disappeared. But the chances of us needing to ever look at case time before the middle of 2003 is pretty slim.
Right. I mean, our approach has been, we haven't implemented this, is to root a lot of rejected files out of that. Maybe I've done that already, to not have the rejected, maybe I did do this already, not to have the rejected files be included in the list that pops up of open files when people are doing on time entries.
Yeah, I mean that's if you, I mean obviously you can work behind the scenes and change how even the search screens work. Right. So changing it so that they don't even show rejected files when you search for a client's name just through the basic search screen is good too. You obviously can't change very much of anything else. You obviously need to know that somebody needs to be able to find out that that person was a client, that they had a rejected file, and why it was rejected. So whatever way that, I mean, obviously it's going to show a lot if you have a lot from years ago, but like I said, there's really no reason to know how much time you spent on a file from 2002. So let me go on to the next one here. This one's kind of a weird one, but we actually get a lot of this, a lot more than I ever thought we would. We have offices that have a single attorney and a single support staff. Sometimes the support staff person is off, the telephone rings and the attorney answers the telephone and takes down the client's information and talks to them and gives them brief advice over the telephone. The support staff person comes in the next day, the attorney hands them the sheet that has all of the client's information on it, and the support staff person, the intake worker, puts it in. Most of our attorneys are kind of computer inept. They have login numbers and staff numbers and things like that for Kemp's, but they don't go anywhere near Prime.
Which could be a blessing, by the way.
Right. So we actually do get a lot of cases where time is entered before the case is opened. This is a painfully simple query, but it's kind of a weird one that, took me a little while to figure out that maybe it was something to look at. Obviously, all this is doing is looking at dates, a date opened after 1/1/2006, and a time date that is before the day of that opening. So if I hit run up here, I'm not sure what's in this database, but I'll look and see. There's actually 3 files that have this file, say 12/08/483 was opened on November 4th, 2008, and had time entered on it on November 3rd. Not a huge problem. All of these are 1 day off, but I mean, this could also look at maybe some input errors where somebody put time on a file that was opened in 2008 and they accidentally typed 2007 when they were putting in their time entry. It's going to catch things like that too.
Can I ask you just to flash back on the design view for a sec?
Sure. Sure. And
Got it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and I do have reports built on top of these, so they come out looking fancier and prettier if I need them for whatever reason, but the queries themselves are the most important part. And this one is good because obviously all it's saying is that it's looking for a time date before the client's W date opened. So, I mean, it's weird. You might not get a lot. You might have a million. It's at least one more way to check your time to make sure that the records aren't completely screwy. Let me go through the last one here. Now this one is really named vanilla. Time coding check is not very descriptive, but this is one of the queries that I have that check a whole bunch of stuff at one time. I have a few others like this, but this one's basically kind of a check-all. Obviously what it's doing, it's looking at time dates greater than 1/1/2008. It's looking for matter supporting activities with filled-in case activities when they shouldn't have them. At least in Laurel Legal Services, we use for time activity and case activity, we use A's, just A's, B's, and P's. We don't have it complicated with all of the other options that are there. The case activities and time, or the case activities in particular that are, spent time on phone with the hearing prep and spent time on telephone with the client. We use very simple. This query could be made as simple or as complex as you needed it. But this one's basically looking at whether or not PAI time is attributed to our funding source 5, which is obviously the major PAI funding source. It's looking for PAI time that is not attributed to 5 back and forth, and it's also looking for a whole bunch of different matter and supporting activity stuff. I can run this one and see what it does, but I'm not sure exactly what the coding in the training database is. It's probably going to bring back a million things, and it did. Usually this query, at least in our database, I know what I'm looking for, so it wouldn't be a problem. But say, for instance, just on this first one, the case number, the date of the time entry, how much time, staff number. The problem with this one that obviously sticks out to me is that it's a PAI case that has regular in-house case activity and time activity on it. Like I said, at Laurel Legal Services, the time activity would be a P or a B, and the case activity would be a P for every single file that has a 5 funding source. That could be different in your program. It's definitely something to consider, though, is that the built-in error checking in Prime doesn't necessarily check the time every way it can. I don't think it sort of checks. In this case, there's the comprehensive error check actually looks for cases that have a funds number 5 and a time activity that's not within the Bs, but it doesn't look at a case activity at all. So there could be any combination of things back and forth that people have put in, people have mistyped, typed over something they shouldn't have, whatever. But these few queries that I've showed you real quick were some of the bigger ones that I've noticed aren't really built into Prime. They're all available. I can zip them up and email them to you. If you want to open them and change them around however you want, you can do whatever you want with them. I think we had them on the SharePoint site. I don't know if anybody's ever taken them off there. I think there was also a time where we were at one of the tech summits or something where maybe me, Susan, Joe, Olympian, and like 2 other people went over some of these. At the end of the day, everybody was ready to go, but that's about it. I could send them to you if you're interested.
Todd, I wanted to let you know that I did send your queries out to everyone just a little while ago, the ones that are in here that you sent to me, so they all have them.
Okay. Good. Well, like I said, I also have reports that sort of, that obviously interlock with these. If for whatever reason you need to look at these prettier than just looking at the queries, then I can send those to you as well.
Susan, how long ago did you send them? Because I have a bunch of queries that Todd had sent me before, but I don't have the matter and supporting activity ones. I don't think I have the first one, attorney assigned to time check.
I sent them about 20 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you meant like weeks ago.
No. I sent you all of these that he's currently using that he's showing you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I sent these to Susan last week, so these are the most up-to-date. Like I said, obviously with things such as the attorney assigned to time check, there's obviously going to be differences with your program. There's going to be different staff numbers in this box, but that's all you'd have to change. You basically put in for staff number any staff number who's not recording time. Anybody that has a number assigned to them that shouldn't have a time entry at all, that would show everybody. Because like I said, the Prime one only checks that there's a staff number assigned, not necessarily that it's somebody that's supposed to be recording time. But that's about it. So thank you, everyone. And if you want anything else from me, just let me know. I can send you everything I have.
Any other
questions?
questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for, thanks Todd, thanks Sam for whatever you did on this. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to the rest of you soon.
Good.
Okay, thank you.